Our next session, Stop Talking in Circles, Driving Behavior Change for a Circular Economy. Please welcome to the stage CEO and Chief Sustainability Officer, IKEA USA, Javier Quinones.
Good morning and warm welcome to this session. My name is Javi Quinones. I am the CEO and CSO for IKEA here in the US. I am super excited about this session. It's probably one of my favorite conversations without, of course, with lots of love for any conversation this week, which has been so far amazing. IKEA is in a journey to become a 100% circular company. I still remember I joined IKEA 25 years ago, very soon. And one of my intro programs was to actually visit all the departments in the store. We visited what we call the As-Is Corner. So we're talking 25 years ago, nothing go to waste, and we reuse, recycle, and resell products. But the journey is only at the beginning of its journey, I will say. We launched a couple of years ago our buyback and resell program. It is already all over the US and almost all over the world, which has been extremely appreciated for many of our customers. We launched actually recently our second-hand platform, and we are testing it right now in Madrid and Oslo. So lots of things happening, lots of things going on. Extremely exciting that we have the journey in front of us, but lots to do, right? And for that, I am extremely happy to introduce a fantastic group of panelists here with me today. And Anna, I'll hand over to you. Warm welcome.
Thank you.
Have a very good session. Enjoy, everyone.
Thank you for having us. I'm Anna Robertson. I'm the co-founder of The Cool Down. For those who are not familiar, we're the largest lifestyle-focused sustainability brand, reaching over 35 million people a month. And I'm so excited to be here with this esteemed panel to talk about circularity, which, let's face it, needs a rebrand, right? Like many climate terms, circularity needs a rebrand, but what I do know from our audience of 35 million is that people are obsessed with it. Whether it's selling something on Poshmark and getting a great deal on a really cool, unique item, or getting spare parts at IKEA, or selling their old tech for cash, people really want to be a part of it. It's really becoming a habit for the next generation of consumer and an expectation from brands. And so really excited to talk to this team about why circularity is so important in addressing climate and how it can be an opportunity for brands to build loyalty and even new revenue streams. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel. At the end, we have Stephen Tristan Young, the Chief Marketing Officer at Poshmark. We have ATTRAM, a Green Biz young leader and a master's student at Columbia University, and our Gen Z expert here on the panel in real life. SHIDEH HASHEMI is the country marketing manager at IKEA USA. RANDI KRONTHAL-SACCO is the senior scholar at the NYU Stern Center for Sustainable Business. And MENG is the policy director for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Thank you guys so much for being here. Daisy, I want to start with you just to kind of level set for the room. Let's define the term circularity in as simple terms as possible so we can understand what we're talking about today.
For sure, yeah. So for me, the easiest way to define circularity is to start with its opposite and think about what a linear economy is. So a linear economy is where you take, make, waste. You are extracting resources, consuming them, and disposing of them. And a circular economy closes that loop so that we are keeping materials and resources and the embedded energy in the economy. For what that looks like in practice, it's exactly what you're talking about. Think about reusing a grocery bag, or reselling or mending and fixing some clothing or furniture. Those are the sorts of activities that fit in the circular economy. And it extends all the way up to the design stage. So we're designing things to do that, and then consumers are executing.
Perfect. Randy, you live and breathe the data. So what are you learning about sort of what works, what companies are doing in this space that you can share with the group?
Yeah, so we just finished some seminal research in partnership with Edelman to understand how to message to consumers in a way that will drive purchase. The interesting findings are the following. One, with the limited brand budgets, if you can only say one thing, you have to talk about the category reason for being. So for IKEA, it might be affordable furniture or stylish furniture. But if you can say two things, You say why you're competing, so category, reason for being, and the second thing would be a sustainability message. And that far outperformed saying 2 category benefits. So adding a sustainability message significantly increased audience appeal and significantly increased your performance on your positioning. The sustainability messages, and all sustainability messages did not perform well. The ones that performed really well that you should be adding to your category reason for being have to do, there's an old marketing adage with them, what's in it for me? It has to be about me, so consumers are very egocentric, and those have to do with my health, my wealth, my personal world. So my health, absence of toxic ingredients harmful to human health, my wealth, durability, or spare parts, as you said, for IKEA, or repair services, things that are gonna add money to your pocket, or my personal world, about your community, about your local farmers, things that my children, anytime you talk about doing things for the future of the planet and for future generations, really strong. And what was so exciting when you talked about my health, my wealth, my personal world, is that was unifying. So it wasn't polarizing like we're hearing in this, you know, as we talk close to the election, whether you were leaned left or right, young or old. If you were talking about my health, my wealth, my personal world, it was incredibly unifying, because I think humanity is what unifies us all.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We see that at the cool down. Like, as much as people say they want to save the planet, it has to work in their lifestyle, and we have to play up those benefits, right?
And on that, so what didn't work is exactly what you're saying. If you just talk about the science, air pollution, biodegradability, you know, it's nice to have, but they don't want to hear it relative to other things that affect them. So if you're going to talk the science, you have to tell them how it benefits them.
Yeah. SHIDEH, I've interviewed 30 leaders this year around sustainability, and a lot of the common theme that we hear is that it's a real opportunity for brand loyalty, as I talked about in the introduction, and for even potentially new revenue streams. How are you guys thinking about that opportunity at IKEA?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Circularity fits so well strategically with our direction, our beliefs, our values. People and caring for people and planet is one of our core values. So at IKEA, we really have embedded this throughout the entire value chain, and circularity just fits beautifully into that story. When we think about loyalty, that's where I see the beauty, because we're extending our presence in a consumer's life by giving them ways of driving that longevity, that connection with our products and our solutions that we're offering to them. As Javi shared, we're exploring a lot of different business models, and it is good business. We are seeing that, obviously from a loyalty perspective, that is a beautiful story, but then on top of that, what we see is just the growing interest. Morning Consult actually just published a study that about 50% of consumers have purchased secondhand in the last 3 months, and furniture and home furnishings were in the top 3. So we have to be there. The demand is there. And we can provide those solutions to be the resource. So we are exploring different business models. Javi shared the ones that we're testing in Oslo and Madrid, so we're super excited to see the results of that and maybe see what that means for us here in the US. In the US, we offer services around the buyback and resell service, as well as then we brought our as-is section of our store as this treasure hunt that consumers love. Because you never know what you're going to get, but we actually connected it digitally recently and gave a sneak peek to what's actually there. And we're seeing that when somebody does the buyback resell, again, from a loyalty perspective, they're getting a store credit or an IKEA credit, and they're basically spending it right away. So again, another reason for us to stay in their lives. And then when that product goes into our as-is section, it's basically selling in a day. So again, from a business standpoint, the demand is there.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, if people don't remember anything else from this panel, it's that sustainability is good business and circularity is good business. So that's great to hear. Drex, I wanted to ask you about, you spend a lot of your time and your studies in just reading corporate sustainability reports, so I'm sorry about that. But anyway, what are you gleaning from those reports in terms of, what works and what doesn't, and maybe highlight some examples?
Yeah, I think specifically when we're looking at like circularity and supply chain circularity, I think companies really struggle to communicate circular supply chains because of just the lack of data on supply chain in general. And I think we really can't communicate a circular supply chain in the same way that you would communicate a linear supply chain. So I think the main struggle is when companies are trying to say that they're doing something when they don't really have the data to back that up, or just putting out like just really big lofty goals. I think that comes across as disingenuous and inauthentic, and then it's really hard to bring in that consumer buy-in because nobody really knows what exactly you're talking about, because it's evident that the company doesn't really know what they're talking about. And I think a brand that does a really good job communicating their circularity efforts specifically, I have an interest in like fashion and textiles, so I'm gonna use a brand from that industry, would be Coach and Coachtopia, and Coachtopia is their circular line focused towards Gen Z specifically. And I think they do a really good job in communicating that because one, they don't necessarily communicate that they have it all figured out. They're kind of communicating the process and the progress of what circularity looks like for Coachtopia, that these bags and these products are made of recycled material. You can bring this back. This is what this factory looks like. They're bringing consumers into the process. And I think that does a really good job communicating circularity because one, it brings in that they have that visibility in their supply chain, and then they also are transparent in communicating that. And I think that authenticity really helps bring in consumer buy-in to circularity initiatives from a company level.
Super interesting. Stephen, Randy referenced the personal benefits around circularity, and I want to talk a little bit about the financial incentive because that's something that we see a lot. Is if people can make some money or get a reduced price on something, especially given how tight times are right now. Poshmark, I think sellers on Poshmark have earned a cumulative $7 billion on the platform since it started. So is that, is that the main draw that you see in terms of a value proposition for why people want to participate in Poshmark?
So I would love to give even more money away. I just need more people to list their items in Poshmark. But I will say that there's actually a couple of different factors that we've observed as to why we're here and how we got here. Probably in the last 10 years, if you think about one, just the evolution of the sharing economy, right? When I joined Poshmark in 2018, people often ask, like, what is this product? I don't understand this. Why would I wear someone else's clothes? Why would I buy someone else's furniture? And I would often say, 10 years ago, you would never live in someone else's home or sit in someone else's car, but here we are. And I said, Gen Z is leading the way for us to think about ownership as more highly temporal, and that the idea that you buying someone else's clothes that they wore 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago is not just for those who are thrifters. It's really going to be something that everyone's going to be adopting. So I think that force has really evolved. Secondarily, I think the idea around the hustle economy. People need to make money, and that for us, I would say, is one of our top line messages because it resonates with everyone who doesn't want to make extra money, who doesn't want to make extra cash. My TV ads talk about a mom and a sister selling something on Poshmark and then going out for a mani and pedi. So really making your goods work harder for you. And I think the final part was really just the rise of the conscious consumer. The fact that people are just more aware of what they're buying, what its impact is on the environment. I often share the stat, I don't know how many of you know this, but in any given year, Gap will come out with about 12,000 SKUs of products. Zara and H&M are around 40,000 SKUs of products. How much do you think Shein makes in a year? 1.5 million products. I mean, that is a magnitude more than we need, too much crap. And I think the fact that customers are more aware of it now is really making people understand whether or not you're going to make that purchase or buy secondhand or buy, as we actually call it, like pre-loved. Because I think people think about items as something that they've had, that they've owned, but something that they want to pass on to someone else. And really all three of these factors, I will say, has been a big factor for our own success and the rise of Poshmark and being much more top of mind. And I'm very happy with that, because I will tell you that when I joined in 2018, I probably wasn't the target audience. I'm not Gen Z. But I want to always understand what it is in the mind of people who are evolving, who are taking us to the next step of consumer consumption, and how my marketing message and our product can help solve for that.
Yeah. that conscious consumer is such an important piece. And even, we haven't discussed this yet, but a lot of those consumers are actually calling out brands who don't do circular well on Reddit and on social media, and so that's a real issue. I want to talk just for a minute about the policy aspect of this, because obviously we've seen some policies rolling out in the EU and anticipating things, and you were telling me backstage that there are some things happening that you're excited about in terms of how policy might be able to level the playing field in terms of what the expectation is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much happening here. It's a really exciting time in the US and around the world, kind of thinking about how circular economy fits into policy. And we see a few key policies coming up again and again that people are thinking about. Extended producer responsibility, so programs where companies are responsible for taking back their products and doing, what you might already be doing, but making them, managing them responsibly. Banning products and materials from landfills, or prohibiting the disposal and incineration of unsold goods or things that are returned. So we see all of these policies kind of picking up steam at the federal level in the US and at state level, where we're seeing some policies already online in states like Massachusetts, or very close to kind of coming online in California. But the key that we've talked about is that they have to be designed well, because it's really easy to incentivize a focus on recycling rather than resale. And so we want to make sure that we're taking account of what our actual priorities are, and also designing around the existing infrastructure. There's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of good work that's already happening to promote resale, and so we need to make sure that as these policies are being developed, they're being developed really thoughtfully and in a targeted way for the industry.
Yeah, I didn't realize Massachusetts already had a law around this issue.
A landfill ban on textiles is in law in Massachusetts, so take note.
And Daisy was telling me that they're going into landfills and looking at the materials that are in the landfill and doing analysis on how much of that is textiles, and actually that's kind of the ground level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They've got to figure out how to enforce it, and that's how you do it. You see who's throwing away what, but they also, we were talking about the need for support. So if you're not supposed to be putting something in a landfill, where are you putting it? Where are you taking it? Who is taking it back? Who is doing the textile to textile recycling or the repair or whatever it is?
Yeah, so we need the policy, but we also need to make sure that it's a good experience when that policy shows up. We may be a little early for that at this point, but obviously a lot of innovation happening in that space. Randy, I want to talk a little bit about Gen Z, because obviously, this is such an important cohort, and sustainability is such a huge priority for them. What can you tell us about Gen Z as it relates to circularity?
Yeah, so another piece of research we look at is actual consumption, what's happening in the stores and what are consumers buying. And Gen Zs differentially are buying brands that signal to that cohort that they are more sustainable than, let's say, a conventional player. So when you hear people aren't purchasing sustainable products, that's an untrue statement, particularly for Gen Zs. Secondly, we do know through a lot of research that Gen Zs are differentially incorporating a brand's environmental message or record in their decision making. So they will actively, they are more loyal to brands that have a good environmental record and actively boycott ones that don't. And finally, to the research that I mentioned earlier, where I said consumers don't really care about the science, that the only cohort that did differentially care about the science was Gen Zs. And I think that's because, as one reporter, when I was reviewing this, had pointed out, well, you're telling me that it's about me, it's about the personal, what's in it for me. Well, for Gen Zs, the science, the world they're inheriting is personal. So for them, it is personal. So when you talk about the science to Gen Zs, it will drive purchase.
Yeah. Does that resonate with you, Drex, as our Gen Z representative on the panel? And what are you kind of seeing with your friend group?
I mean, absolutely. Like I said, the brands, when you read sustainability reports, we're reading to figure out this is their claim. Why is this their claim? What are they actually doing that makes things sustainable? So I think Gen Z really does want to be brought into the process of sustainability. But I also think Gen Z is going to make the most convenient, authentic, and sustainable choice. It needs to meet all three of those criteria for them to decide, I'm going to shop here. But I think that, like Randy also just mentioned, we have grown up in an era where climate change is very much in our face, that we are living and breathing circularity and sustainability without even realizing it. So I think when brands are trying to communicate circularity to Gen Z, they just have to realize define the things that we're already doing. Like we're taking our tote bags to the grocery store, we're reusing our Tupperware. Like this is all part of the circular economy. Let's just define it so then when companies are pushing circularity initiatives, they can compare it to my personal life. This is how I'm being circular in my life, and this is how they're being circular as a company, and these do align, so I want to shop and I want to spend my money here. Yeah, so I think that does resonate.
Yeah, so seeing themselves in the experience, and
Yeah.
then a lot of them are participating in it, but the brands may not even be touting that or talking about it, but it's an opportunity to connect with that audience, right? Something that you've seen. What are you seeing at IKEA in terms of how you're thinking about reaching that Gen Z audience around this issue?
We actually identified that sustainability was a key opportunity for us to actually expand the dialogue that we were having with Gen Z, because we had traditionally really worked with that audience from a back to college perspective.
Yeah.
And this past year we said, we wanted to extend that relationship with the audience. And we really saw a big opportunity in raising awareness of these services that we were introducing. Because also a nugget with this group was that sustainability and affordability go hand in hand. When we go back to the WIFM, this is a group that's really squeezed right now from a budget standpoint, and many of them are actually returning and living at home and need to, so for our category, it's an opportunity to give them options for how they can continue to grow their presence, to create their own personality, build their home, but in different ways and in ways that they have interest in. So we actually went out to market this past year with a much bigger approach where we took a 360 perspective, introduced our campaign with paid media on social. I would say my biggest takeaway, we worked with influencers, was how important it is to meet the audience where they are. Because at the end of the day, they're consuming digital media and on the various platforms. And so that was where we saw the greatest effectiveness when folks responded. So the influencers in particular really blew our socks off in terms of the reception that we saw there. And in terms of results, what was great was we did see awareness build versus last year on both campaigns, but what was even better was we saw usage grow. So our buyback resale, as is online, which was interesting, is one that we didn't focus on as much, but the awareness of it is much higher, and I think it is because it has that online pathway for that audience. So I think digital is key.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much, what we see is there's so much creativity happening, especially among those influencers who may take an IKEA product and completely reimagine it, right? And sort of normalizing that and making that feel like that's the future. I think it's so much fun to see those pop up everywhere. So that makes sense. Stephen, I want to talk a little bit about innovation in circularity and technology, because I know you just came off of the Posh Fest and getting together with a lot of people who are really deeply engaged in your platform, and you're really excited about some of the technology that we're going to see making this even better and bigger.
So, so we've got a lot in the bag coming in the next year. A couple of things that have really that we're focusing on to sort of make the selling and the buying much easier within our platform. One of which is live commerce. So it's something we launched about 1.5 years ago. So live commerce, for many of you know, is like super huge in Asia. Hasn't really gotten the much traction here in the US, but we're seeing much more growth over the last 6 to 8 months. And specifically, live selling makes understanding the products even better. Sellers can talk about the materials, they can show it on screen, they can stretch it, they can show the labels. There's a bit more of an intimate experience when you're selling live. And I think for people, especially who are conscious consumers who want to know more about what they're buying, it helps drive more interaction, which ultimately leads to more sales. The second feature that like everyone else, AI is being integrated into a lot of our tools and services for our sellers and our buyers. Everything from thinking about how do I make listing this item much faster and easier. So it'll give you the pricing, it'll actually identify similar brands or actually identify the brand that you're wearing. The more that we can make taking a photo of an item and then listing it on Poshmark in the least amount of time will drive more people to want to use the product. The third part, and we can bring this full circle, is really thinking through how do we partner with other brands that have a focus on sustainability. So as Drax mentioned, Coachtopia, we actually just launched a partnership last week where people can just scan the QR code that is on their bag, that tells them the etymology of their bag, and then we'll actually give them all the listing items and now make an automatic listing for you on Poshmark. So being able to just take an item, scan the QR code, and have a listing pop up for us is an example of how to make sustainability and circularity even more, drive the ease of use and remove the friction for the user, because the more people see how easy it is, the more people want to do it. And we recognize that the people who are probably early adopters and middle adopters right now are the ones who have time, the ones who want to make money, the ones who are more conscious. But as we make the process easier for everyone, it becomes something that everyone starts to adopt, and which is really one of our goals.
Yeah, there's so much exciting stuff in the technology space, around popping up that used item or the resale item, pre-loved item first, right? Instead of when somebody's looking for a new item, which you see more and more happening. So that's awesome. I want to open it up to the group now for just a couple final questions. What advice would you have to anybody in the audience who is either starting a circular business or has a circular business? Anybody want to take that one?
Well, so I'll say this. And I know we're at Climate Week and we're talking about sustainability, but I think one of the most important things is always thinking about what is the value proposition to what you mentioned, like what's in it for me as a user. Like, at least for us at Poshmark, we are a sustainable business, but we actually didn't come out very early and talk about it as the main thing as to why you should join us. We really wanted to focus on your basic needs. You need to make money. You want to be a conscious consumer. You want to think about a product that is easy to use, that is fun, that emphasizes social shopping. And I think thinking about the core parts of your business like that, like what's in it for the user first, versus saying, here's all the nice bells and whistles. Because if it doesn't work and it's crappy, you can have all the nice bells and whistles, but you won't get adoption, you won't get the growth. And so for us, it's always been a part of our core to think about who we are first, what problem we're solving, and then figure out how do we then present it to the user so that they're making the most conscious decision possible.
Yeah, I think that fun element, right, and bringing some delight to the experience. I mean, I think that's another aspect we haven't really discussed, which is when somebody finds something unique on Poshmark that they're like, this is great, or they remake an old, cabinet or something into something new. It's bringing that delight and kind of showcasing that as an important piece as well.
To build on what Stephen just shared, I think when we did the influencer executions, the reason why they worked so well is because it tapped into one of the consumer needs around this space, which is just give me more knowledge and know-how. I need a little more confidence or trust in what you're trying to show me or sell me. So I think that's the other part, is when you think about not only the consumer with them, but then how do you make it super easy for somebody to take in and be able to. There's so many tools now where you can bring it to life so that they know that it is easy to actually be able to do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I would say, tell the consumer what you're doing. They will be very willing to go on a journey with you. I am amazed at how many brands do really good things around circularity and other pieces of sustainability and just don't talk to the consumer about it. There was just a study that came out that said less than 4% of all advertising globally is focused on a sustainability message. Doesn't even have to say, or focused on an individual aspect of sustainability along with the category benefit. Less than 4%, and the bulk is we're really around EVs. So there's such an opportunity to talk to consumers about what you're doing, because if you don't, they have no idea.
Yep.
Right, and it's talking about it in a way that resonates, right? And not just hammering over the head sustainability and earth and planet, but talking about the benefit to them.
Exactly.
What do you all see, as people living and breathing this, what does the future look like to you guys? Are you optimistic about what you're seeing in the space?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're gonna see more and more businesses thinking about the full circle of their products, and we're going to have more and more options available to consumers, and that's always good.
Yeah, maybe that whole resale shop coming to the U.S. I know you're testing a full resale shop, right?
Yeah, so that's the test that Javi mentioned in the beginning in Oslo and Madrid, so we'll see.
I'm excited about the regulations coming down the pipe, because
You and me both.
Yes, I do think that there needs to be the carrot and the stick, and with global supply chains, what's coming out of California and what's coming out of Europe is changing the business, and I think businesses need the incentives to start to move.
Yeah, we need the regulations and the consumer demand, and then the technology to support it, because cleaning the items and listing the items and getting them in front of people, there's so many elements of this that all come together. So.
Well, I think the technology or systems and supplies will help drive down the cost. Because I think the challenge sometimes with sustainable shopping is, or even just things that are being sustainable, you have to be able to have the wallet to do it. And ideally, everyone should be able to be in a place where they can afford things that are sustainable, whether it's, you know, your Tupperware or your food containers, et cetera, but making sure that there's actually systems to help drive down the fundamental costs of the supplies.
Right, yeah, the misconception that sustainability is not affordable. It's just not true anymore. The products work just as well, they're great, they're affordable, so it's just getting that message out. Well, thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you everybody for being here, and happy Climate Week to everybody. Thank you.